What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today I got a reaction to Blue Öyster Cult. Their top 10 songs, brought to us by a friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Slade Said. Thank you, Slade Said. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons that make this thing go. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out that Patreon link below or the patron link on the end screen. We could not do it without them. I don't know a lot about Blue Öyster Cult. We do have a reaction to one song up, and it does appear in this top 10, and I've reacted to a little bit of their songs in various top 10s. Some of them from Slade Said, the patron that brought this, but I'm going to let Slade Said talk because Slade Said knows more about music, at least this music, than I do. Slade says, now I am actually not the biggest fan of BOC. I obviously like the band a lot, otherwise I wouldn't make this list, but I do believe they have made a good number of subpar songs, which a hardcore BOC fans would strongly disagree with, I am sure as well. On the other hand, a band who has released albums between 1972 and 2024 will obviously have a good number of great songs as well. And that is, of course, also the case for BOC. And so narrowing the list down to 10 songs only was not an easy task, because it had cut out a lot of great songs, including songs that I know are beloved by the hardcore BOC fans. With more than 50 years of history with the band, there's a lot to write about, of course, but I will try to cut it short. New York-based BOC originates all the way back to 1967, where they went under the name of Soft White Underbelly. They liked unique names, eh? They recorded an album in that name, but it was never released. The main reason was that original lead singer of the band, Les Bronstein, had left the band after the recordings. He was replaced by the band's acoustic engineer, Eric Bloom, who is one of only two current members that have been with the band since its start, when discounted, of course, the aforementioned unreleased album under a different name. They then changed their name to Stalk Forest Group, under which they, in 1970, recorded another album that was never released by the record company, which was Elektra, and they were subsequently cut loose by Elektra. The album was actually finally released in 2001. Yet again, the band decided to change the band name, and following a few short-lived names, they finally decided on Blue Öyster Cult. I mean, also an odd name, but a better name than those other two. They managed to sign a contract with Columbia Records and release their self-titled debut as BOC in 1972. As of 2024, they've released 16 studio albums, including the 2024 album, the year I'm recording this, Ghost Stories, which is a collection of outtakes. They've had a lot of band members during their career, and I will spare you from going through them all, but I'll highlight the ones who I believe are the most important ones to mention. I've already mentioned Eric Bloom, who's one of several singers in the band. He's often mentioned as the band's lead singer, and he's probably the closest we'll get to that, but the songs are divided between a few good singers. Outside of vocals, he also plays rhythm guitars and keyboards. Donald Buck Dahmer Roser is probably the band's MVP and the only member to have been there right from the start in 1967, which is amazing. He also sings on a good number of songs and is arguably the joint lead singer along with Eric Bloom, and plays the lead guitar. Albert Bouchard was the band's original drummer from 1967 until 1981 and also sang on a number of songs, plus he played rhythm guitars on a few as well. Alan Lanier was with the band from 67 to 85 when he had briefly left the band, only to rejoin the year after and staying in the band until 2006. It's a long time. He played keyboards and rhythm guitars in the band. Oh, and he also sang as well. Of course he did. Joe Bouchard, brother of Albert Bouchard, joined the band in 1970 and stayed until 1986. He was the band's bass player, but also played keyboards and rhythm guitars, and you already guessed it, vocals, obviously. The current lineup, as of 2024 when I'm recording this, consists of Eric Bloom, Buck Dahmer, Danny Miranda on bass, Richie Castellano on keyboards, guitars, and vocals, and Jules Rodino on drums. Slade said the final important person to mention is Sandy Pearlman, the manager of the band. Usually I wouldn't include a band's manager, but Sandy Pearlman was not your typical band manager. He actually wrote a lot of the band's lyrics, produced or co-produced 7 of their studio albums and 4 of their live albums, and was the man behind all the names. Plus he made the band focus on their musical style, where he originally wanted to promote them as the U.S. version of Black Sabbath, whom of course he would later manage for a number of years as well. And the band's symbol was also a creation by him. It's part of a story, a collection of unpublished poems and scripts by Pearlman called The Soft Doctrine of Imaginos. And the symbol was referring to the Blue Öyster Cult, which the band then adopted as their name. He also wanted the band members to adopt the stage names, but it was really only Buck Dahmer who kept his. Let's stop the history lesson here and turn to the music. So great write-up. I've always wondered how they got that name. I didn't know anything by them until this channel, and then I only know a couple songs. But I mean, their name is very unique, not in a bad way. Unique in a bad way, I guess, is still good because you want to be remembered, and it's really hard to have a name that's memorable because there's so many band names out there. So If you haven't been with us before, the music will not be in the video, but it'll be at a Vimeo link below. Click on that and follow along with us. Let's jump in. With number 10, That Was Me from the album The Symbol Remains in 2020. So like I said, we kick off the list with a very late song in the career. It's one of their heavier songs in their discography. I've mainly chosen the song to show that a band can still deliver good songs very late in their career, as, spoiler alert, the rest of the list is before 1990. Many fans absolutely love the album, which was the first studio release by the band in 19 years. All right, I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, Slade said. All right, That Was Me. Definitely great hard rock and stuff. Eric still sounds good. Buck Dharma killing it on the guitar, just absolutely killing it. And the story of the song is basically just all these bad things that happened. That was me, man. I'm still out here and I can still cause some havoc, basically. But I think the guitar riff was the most redeeming thing about that song. But I mean, when you consider they've been together for 50 years at the point they were making this, or almost, like as a band, fantastic stuff. See you below. Next up at number 9, you got Don't Fear the Reaper. Don't Fear is in parentheses, but everyone just calls it Don't Fear the Reaper. So this is one of the 2 songs that we had. It was a song battle that we did maybe a little over a year ago. So this is one of the songs that I know. But Slade says, I've chosen to include the band's most famous song by far on the list. Yeah, I was thinking that. Everybody probably has this number 1. Yes, it can be said to have been overplayed at one time, but it's not anymore, really, unless you listen to a lot of classic rock radio. And I don't personally. That's what he said. That's what I say. The song was the lead single of the album and peaked at number 12 on the Billboard singles chart, while the album Agents of Fortune peaked at number 29 on the albums list back in 1976. It was written by Buck Dharma, who also handled the lead vocals on the song. Its meaning led to great discussions by the fans. While written with the thoughts of the inevitability of death and dying young on the lyricist's mind, on Buck's mind, he staunchly insisted that his theme was eternal love. Rolling Stone named it the Song of the Year in 1976, although it only reached number 12 on the charts, 7 in Canada, 16 in the UK. The number 12 on the US charts is their highest charted single. And a lot of people interpret it because you have lyrics such as Romeo and Juliet are together in eternity. I've led many to interpret the song to be about a murder-suicide pact. But Buck actually talked about this, Buck Dharma, the writer. He said, I felt like I just achieved some kind of resonance with the psychology of people when I came up with that. I was actually kind of appalled when I first realized that some people were seeing it as an advertisement for suicide or something that was not my intention at all. It is like not to be afraid of death as opposed to actually actively bringing it about. It's basically a love song where the love transcends the actual physical existence of the partners. All right, with all that build up in mind, let's get to it. All right, Don't Fear the Reaper. Just a fantastic song. I love the way he sounds. It's when he hears it, Don't Fear the Reaper. And obviously that guitar part is just a repeating riff. It's just infectious in the head. The vocals and kind of the harmonies in the way they come in sound like it should be a late 60s song. The arrangement, however, does not. So I think that kind of dichotomy works well as well. Except for number 8, we got The Great Sun Gesture from the album Mirrors in 1979. Slade said the album was originally met with some disappointment from the fan base. He thought it was too commercial, but I believe history/time has redeemed the album. I personally always loved the album, although admittedly it's not totally removed from the fact it was the first album I ever heard by the band, so there may be some nostalgia bias involved here. You can't remove the nostalgia bias. This is there. I get it. I probably rate it as my favorite BOC album, Slade said. I've tried to be somewhat objective and not include too many songs from the album. I've included, spoiler alert again, 2. But I really like most of the songs from the album a lot. One of my clear favorites is this song. Eric Bloom handles lead vocals here. The Great Sun Gesture. Now, I found in my own research it relates to stories of the cyberpunk godfather Michael Moorcock, who co-wrote the song with the band. This one and The Fire Clown are both characters in Moorcock's stories, and he's going to pop up again here in a little bit, and I'll just leave it at that. But so that's what the story's about. You know, they're killing the Great Sun Gesture, but I thought the vocals sounded great. But the longer the song went on, the more I just enjoyed the building of the arrangement. Right, it's kind of a dramatic song, and they did a good job building that. And once again, I'm going to be a broken record, no pun intended. I can tell Buck Dharma's guitar, fantastic. Next up at number 7, we have Veterans of the Psychic Wars from the album Fire of Unknown Origin in 1981. Slade said this album from 1981 is the top 3 album to most BOC fans, I believe. I'm not totally on board with that, but I will say it has a good number of good or great songs. It was actually the album that became the highest charting album, peaking at 24 on the Billboard albums list, with the lead single Burning for You being a top 40 hit. It was the final album with its original lineup as drummer Albert Bouchard, as I talked about earlier. He was fired by the band during a tour for the album when they had a fallout. The song I picked for this list was also used in the animated film Heavy Metal. Eric Bloom singing the lead once again. All right, veteran of the Psychic Wars. I'll say something for them. A lot of their songs are longer. We're going to get into some longer ones even than some of them that we've been listening to. Their songs don't seem long. That's the biggest compliment I can pay to a band or an artist. But really well done on that one. And this was another one where the lyrics were written by cyberpunk godfather Michael Moorcock. The story is delivered in the voice of the Eternal Champion, a modern myth experiment by Moorcock and occasionally his writers at New World. This tells the story of the Endless Champion's endless miserable toil throughout the multi-universe. So there's some different characters. So I should have told you that beforehand. I mean, I had that information beforehand, but it kind of helps the song make a little more sense. And I mentioned it during the song, which I never usually mention anything during the song, but Albert's drumming on here is fantastic. I thought the keyboard work was nice too. Low key, no pun intended, not overwhelming, but really good. Nice interplay there with the drumming. I mean, Albert might have been on his way out, but he was leaving. He was leaving on a high note. Next up at number 6, we got a title that rolls right off the tongue. The siege and investiture of Baron von Frankenstein's castle at Wisseria. Right? I mean, of course. Could I memorize that in 10 minutes? I don't know, man. Album Imaginos in 1988. Slade said, as stated in the beginning, there's quite a story behind the album Imaginos from 1988. The band had written and recorded songs for a trilogy based on the story all the way back from 1972. But outside of Perlman himself, only Albert Bouchard was really into the idea of doing this, so it never materialized as intended. Following the sacking of Albert Bouchard, which we just talked about that happened in 1981 from the band, he and Sandy Perlman continued to work on the project, which was now intended to be a solo project for Albert. However, the record company wasn't too keen on the project either, so due to the lack of funding, the project was put on hold. That was until the BOC album Club Ninja from 1985 flopped, both commercially and critically, and led to the disbanding of the band. Sandy Perlman used this as an opportunity to again promote Imaginos to the record label, but this time as a BOC album rather than a solo Albert project, and the record label agreed to this, so they started to rework some of the songs. Mostly non-BOC musicians were used for the album, including Joe Satarini, but also Eric Bloom and Buck Dharma were involved in the recordings. Some of the songs on the album had been used on other albums earlier in the band's career, as the Imaginos project were discarded by the band originally, but appears on the album in reworked versions, and in some cases, also under new song titles. Unfortunately for the band, the album was not well received critically, and didn't sell much either. So it did not lead to a new beginning for the band, who went on hiatus for 10 years before returning with the album Heaven Forbid in 1998. Albert Bouchard has since released the Imaginos as the trilogy was originally intended to be, but that's another story. Personally, Slade said, I'm not a huge fan of the album, especially I don't like the production, and I'm not a fan of the reworked version of the song Astronomy either, where I much prefer the original version. Still, there are some good songs to be found here, in particular, this song. The lead vocalist on the song is actually non-band singer Joey Sarasano. All right, a very grand arrangement in there. An interesting song, a different lead singer than is in the band. And you could kind of feel it on it. And I know the project, the grandeur of the project went to it too, because it almost has a Jim Steinman produced sound to it, Meatloaf, that kind of sound to it. Not totally in here, but the grandeur of it, I thought the vocals were good. But we built out that last minute and a half with just, cinematic stuff, which you're going to do in a concept album and a thought like this. I'm not even going to get into what the lyrics mean because I read a bunch of different theories. Who the heck knows? But shows you kind of what they can do when they want to spread their wings, right? And just do this like grand thing. Now we're to the top 5. We're going to go from this grand arrangement into, this might be a grand arrangement, but a simple concept. It's Godzilla. It is about what it sounds like it's about. From the album Spectres in 1977. Second single off the album, which was the follow-up to the album Agents of Fortune, which of course, Don't Fear, The Reaper was on. The first single of the album, Going Through the Motions, was a pretty commercial song, albeit a good one, that performed well, but not to the extent of The Reaper. So second choice as a single was a very different beast. When Sandy Perlman wanted BOC to be the American equivalent to Black Sabbath, I am sure, Slade says, he had a song like Godzilla in mind. The song didn't sell a lot as a single, but received a lot of radio airplay, and today is one of the most famous BOC songs, and for good reason. I think both Eric Bloom and Buck Dharma are credited as lead vocalists, and they indeed are. Godzilla couldn't be more different than the previous track, right? But very catchy, the, oh no, they say he's got to go, 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 Godzilla, yeah. Oh no, there goes Tokyo, go, go, Godzilla, yeah. Obviously great guitar work, a lot of Sabbath stuff in there, harmonizing there between Buck and Eric. But I thought that was a really good song. Interesting song to write. I don't know why exactly they wrote it. We even got a little Japanese in there right after the instrumental break. Next up at number 4, we got Black Blade off the album Cultosaurus Erectus in 1980. Slade said, as the album Mirrors had been seen by a lot of fans as too commercial and slick, the band turned towards producer Martin Birch, who produced bands such as Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, and Iron Maiden, amongst others, to help the band create a heavier sound. They succeeded with that, as this album definitely is harder hitting than Mirrors. But I do think that its reputation as a very heavy album is overrated. It's actually not that heavy overall. But some songs certainly do rock, and to me, the best by far is the album opener, Black Blade, where we got Eric Bloom as our lead vocalist. All right, Black Blade, closer to 7 minutes and 6. And if you're going to do that, then you've got to keep the arrangement interesting. They definitely did that, almost like a talk box at the end. Also written by Michael Moorcock, who wrote Eternal Champion Stories and wrote The Great Sun Gesture and Veteran of the Psychic Wars. This is the third Moorcock penned song that is on here. It's about Black Blade. Black Blade is a sword. It has control of our protagonist. The sword is evil, almost a little bit of Lord of the Rings stuff in here, but an impressive piece of musicianship. Next up at number 3, we got Take Me Away from the album The Revolution by Night in 1983. Fire of the Origin, Unknown Origin, the album that followed Cultosaurus Erectus, was a less heavy version of the band, and as previously noted, the album was a huge success for the band, and this prompted them to move in an even more AOR direction. Alas for the band, that was not really what their fan base wanted. So sales of the album, The Revolution by Night, was a disappointment compared to the previous album. The album does sound very slick and has pretty distinctive 80s hard rock sound that it hasn't necessarily dated well. One song stands out from the rest, which again is the album opener, this one, Take Me Away. It's the first single, and when hearing the song, you would expect the BOC had released a seriously heavy album, but you would be disappointed by the rest of the album based on this. The song itself, however, is one of my absolute favorites by the band, as the number 3 rank suggests. Once again, lead singer Eric Bloom. Take Me Away, fantastic guitar work on there. Really good, almost harmonizing on the chorus part in some parts. Take me away. So had a really good sound to it. It's about UFOs, man. It's about, alien intelligence, man. That's what it's about. Take me away. But really well done. All right, we got 2 songs left. I expect them both to be epic because they're both almost 6.5 minutes long. We got The Vigil from the album Mirrors in 1979 coming in at number 2. So I said I have 2 BOC songs I prefer to the rest, and they basically share my number 1 spot. But since one song has to be number 1, I had to move another one down 1 spot. And so on the number 2 spot, I've listed The Vigil from the album Mirrors. I've actually included this song once or twice already on previous lists, but what can I say? I think this song is a masterpiece in the BOC discography. Lead vocalist this time is lead vocalist on The Reaper. Do you remember? Buck Dharma. All right, The Vigil. I don't really remember this song, but I'm sure I praised it before. I'm going to praise it again. So far, we haven't heard the number 1 song yet. Just an absolute masterclass in musicianship. Buck Dharma's guitar is fantastic. The drumming is great. We got change-ups. We got harmonizing. It really pulls you in. And once again, we've got a theme here. Previous song was about this, and this one also is about, aliens, extraterrestrial life, and I think trying to prove their existence. This song I did find, it was originally intended to be called Wind in My Veins, with Alan Lanier assuming the vocals. Another previous title was Devil's Nail, which a demo of with alternate lyrics was released in the early 2000s as part of Buck Dharma's special edition demo archive tape. So if you like that, go check, if you like this, go check that one out, I should say. But so far, the best song on here. I'm not giving anything away from my face, but it's just kind of a masterclass in everything, right? Everybody's firing on all cylinders, but they've got to be on this next one as well because the number 1 song in Slade Said's Top 10 Blue Oyster Cult songs. We got Astronomy from the Secret Treaties album in 1974. Slade said this song was a song that was originally intended to be part of that Imaginos that we were talking about project, but since that project didn't materialize until much later, as we know, some of the songs were used on other albums, and Astronomy appeared on this album, the band's 3rd album. The song was written by the Beauchard brothers and had lyrics by Sandy Pearlman. Lead vocalist on the song was Eric Bloom. It's also featured in a reworked version on the Imaginos album with Buck Dharma on lead vocals, but I much prefer the original version. For the 1988 version, a B-side single of the song included a spoken narrative by longtime BOC fan Stephen King that explained the story. Stephen said, Imaginos, performed by Blue Oyster Cult, a bedtime story for the children of the damned. From a dream world paralleling our Earth in time and space, The invisible ones have sent an agent who will dream the dream of history. With limitless power, he becomes the greatest actor of the 19th century. Taking on many ingenious disguises, he places himself at pivotal junctures in history, continually altering its course and testing our ability to respond to the challenge of evil. His name is Imaginos. And I read that like eventually it plays out where his actions, he plays key roles in the outbreak of World War I in this story. Not in this song, but in the story of Imaginos. All right, number 1 on Slade Said's Blue Oyster Cult Top 10. We got Astronomy. All right, Astronomy, Slade Said's number 1 Blue Oyster Cult song. And I think it's a fitting number 1. It's not quite my favorite, but it's really well done. A lot of the same stuff as our previous track, just so well built up. You know, I haven't talked about Alan Lanier's keyboards, but they're just fantastic on several of these songs. Kind of an unsung hero because the guitar work by Buck Dharma is so fantastic. But this song was really good. Like I said, really well built out. A longer song that doesn't seem long. You're going to build these longer songs. Please don't drone on about the same thing. Let's give me some change-ups. Let's give me some fantastic showcasing of master musicians. And this song did that just like The Vigil did. Well, now it's time to get to my favorite tracks. Honorable mentions: A Siege, an investiture of Baron von Frankenstein's castle at Wissaria. I'm low-key, I didn't want to make it an honorable mention because I don't have to say it all again, but honorable mention: Godzilla, Black Blade, Take Me Away. Faves, of course, The Reaper, Don't Fear the Reaper. Astronomy, this past song, which I will say in parts of it sounded more Black Sabbath than any other song that they had to me on this list. And my favorite, The Vigil. But a fantastic list. Didn't know anything really about Blue Oyster Cult. Now I know some stuff. Pretty good band. Good musicianship. Buck Dharma on that guitar is fantastic. And Eric Bloom on the majority of these lead vocals. Very good job as well. Let me know your favorite tracks on this top 10 down below. If you are a super fan, let me know your top 5 or top 10 Blue Oyster Cult songs as well. Once again, thank you to Slade Said, who always does a masterful job of assembling the top 10s. And until next time, guys, I will see you.